What's up, everybody? Well, Climate change strikes again. Did you know that pyramids fall down because the weather batter? I'll try not to be too salty, but I really am kind of tired of being propageed about every single thing at all times. And it's about to be ramped up into high gear for the next 2 months. So here we go. Extreme weather events and rising seas are putting precious heritage sites around the world in harm's way. A precious stone pyramid in Mexico is the latest to succumb to an increasingly chaotic global climate. On the night of July 29th, the 15-meter high monument suddenly slumped under the pressure of incessant rain, its south wall crumbling into a pile of rubble. Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History say that at least 6 of its stepped bodies are in disrepair, including the outer wall and the core and retaining wall. They blame the extreme weather events of recent weeks. In July, the peak of the Northern Hemisphere summer, heavy rainfall and thunderstorms battered much of Mexico. This came after the worst drought in the nation in 30 years, when rain became so scarce several lakes dried up completely. Quote, the high temperatures previously recorded in the area and the consequent drought caused cracks that favored the filtration of water into the interior of the pre-Hispanic building. Now, I have kept a pretty close track of the weather the last few years due to this incessant propagee. And here we are about mid-August, peak of summer. And once again, temperatures here are about to drop off to a nice 80 degrees again. We've had 2 to 3 weeks of hot weather this year. But every little heat wave we get now, they're screaming at the top of their lungs that it's record shattering. And now they're saying since the weather was hot for a little while and then it rained, that allowed water filtration into this pyramid and it fell down because of climate change. So prior to it getting hot, water didn't get into this pyramid, but it was so hot that it broke its waterproofing barrier, right? Now, if you're new around here, you might not know this, but about 700 years ago, there were worldwide catastrophes. And I think pretty much all of Mexico and Central America got hit with a giant tsunami. What you're looking at here is the famed pyramids at Teotihuacan, 1900 versus 2020. And 100 years ago, everything, including the pyramids, were covered with a layer of earth about 6 feet thick, probably. You can see there's agave growing all over the place here. They've even got a road cut in going up to the top of this pyramid. And the locals, I'm sure they had legends saying that those were man made, but they had no idea by who. This is the famous Avenue of the Dead, looking at the probably Pyramid of the Sun, maybe Moon. And then this is that today, where millions of tourists visit every year. This whole area is in a valley, and, I'm guessing it was just about 6 foot of silt deposits that were left over everything. But other areas look like they just got blasted. You can see that's all just bare earth underneath there. And, all it ever was rocks stacked up on it. But that casing layer is just completely gone. And in other pictures, you'll see them digging through the rubble. And what makes the most sense to me is that a wall of water hit all this. These are probably up on hillsides, so it just gets the initial blast and then the water's gone. There's also millions of pictures out there of all of these stela, and most of them are leaning a bit. Now, this could be liquefaction, but that doesn't account for things being scattered all over the place. And here's the deal, is millions and millions of people lived here before this. And this is all, I'm sure they've literally dynamited a bunch like this. A lot of these and the carved stones and stuff, I think were just road signs. I've definitely seen carved out stones in Peru that were a topographical map of their region. But like right here, they're probably talking about every king of this area for the last 1,000 years. Now with LiDAR, they have found, thousands and thousands of towns with hundreds of thousands of miles of roadways connecting all of them. And I'm pretty sure at this point that a lot of those stela were road markers. But there were more people living in that region before than there are now, and over a much wider area. Everybody's concentrated in, tight packed cities now. But this whole area just got annihilated, and the stuff that they didn't just dynamite and doze over is now these tourist attractions that have been completely rebuilt. Here's one that ancient aliens and the like love to point out: the Temple of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza, where on the equinox, the shadow from the corner of the building forms the waviness of the snake going up. And they write all kinds of stuff like this about what the ancients used to think. The equinox marks the transition from winter to spring and holds the symbol of birth and death, respectively. Another interesting interpretation of the equinox is that the perfect alignment of the sun and the earth represents balance. As a result of that alignment, some believe that on this day everything is in equilibrium, and therefore it is the day that we have the greatest potential to transcend ourselves, be free of prejudice, and act in commitment to fairness. Oh, isn't that sweet? The ancient Maya cared so much about equality that they built this whole temple just to tell future generations. Yeah, just don't look the king in the eye or it's off with your head. Oh yeah, and then there's this. Yeah, that's how the original pyramid was found. Here, let's get a little closer view so you can see exactly how precise they aligned that stairwell on the left side with the rising sun of the spring equinox. What stairwell, you ask? The one with the snake. See? It's right there. Apparently, all of the ancient monuments in Mexico look that way to begin with. Here you can see that they're rebuilding the whole thing after an agreement was made between the Mexican government and archaeological departments with deep pockets from America. And that's who decided that it should look like this. You can see how it was originally discovered. It obviously only had one stairwell going up. And I would pretty much bet money that it was an accident that the corners actually line up with that stairwell on the spring equinox. And it's pretty much comical listening to people today say, oh, they couldn't have built that thousands of years ago by hand. What, you think they did this with horse and buggy? Well, I don't think the originals did. There's no evidence that they actually used horses. But the local Mexicans they hired 100 years ago to rebuild all of this for a penny a week, they did. And I may have to put out a short video standalone after a comment from the last video, but I sit here and literally watched a couple of guys that have no idea how to build, never built anything in their lives, convince the whole internet world that any stone structure is impossible to build. Now, yes, the truly ancient megaliths that are thousands of tons and cut in odd shapes like in Peru, there's something to that, but it got transferred over to every single stone building. These pyramids are just a bunch of rough stones. They're not even faced for 90% of the building. But there's been hundreds of millions of dollars made in the media world by saying that these are impossible to build by hand, when in reality, these were built so recently that we have photographs of them assembling this by hand. The most advanced tool on this site here is carbon steel shovels and pickaxes, and they're loading wicker baskets full of debris and hauling them off. But the stairway, which is so perfectly aligned with the spring equinox, wasn't even there on the original building. And what is much more likely is they had an entire settlement like this there with stones all over the place, and they dug through the rubble of the whole town so that they could find enough stones to make this one awesome pyramid for tourists to come see. But now Mino Climate made it rain so that for the first time in 5,000 years, water seeped into these pyramids. That is a reproduction done by unskilled laborers as cheaply as possible. And it's literally just a big mound of dirt, which, I mean, it's impressive. It's an enormous amount of labor that went into this. But it's probably only about 100 years old, and it wasn't well compacted dirt underneath. So every time it's rained for the last 100 years, it's been excavating dirt, and there's been big hollow cavities up underneath for a long time, and then it finally gave way. But hey, never let a good crisis go to waste. Blame it on Climate. Static out.